All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our first episode of Research Fantasy Presents NBA Fantasy Ballers DFS Edition. What we're trying to do here is just give you 3 key plays to get you through your fantasy lineups tonight. And we're going to start it off with Jrue Holiday of the New Orleans Pelicans taking on the Houston Rockets. It's a high total game. It was 227 last I looked. Houston was a 3-point road favorite. Holiday comes in pretty expensive all the way around, 13.8 on Fantasy Draft, 8,100 on FanDuel, and 7,500 on DraftKings. The reason I'm going with Holidays today is there's just a lack of guards playing in New Orleans. As far as I can tell, it's just Tim Frazier, Jrue Holiday, and Nitwan Moore. That should give you elite ownership across the board. I expect all of them to be very highly owned. Even though the Rockets are pretty decent against the point guard position, this is just an attrition play. These guys are going to have so many minutes that they have to absorb. Holiday was performing well going into the All-Star break. As long as it stays close, and I think it will, I'm expecting the minutes for Holiday to be around 38. He could see as high as early 40s. It just all depends. He's going to be one of the key playmakers on this team. I think you're getting a bargain. I think you could see another 50-point outing from him here tonight. Next up, we're going to go all the way up and spend up on James Harden. He's the opponent tonight of the New Orleans Pelicans. And what more do you need to say about Harden? He's the most expensive guy on the slate, coming in at 22.3 on Fantasy Draft, 12.6 on FanDuel, 12.5 on DraftKings. I think he's going to see, even with Lou Williams coming over, I could still see him coming through with a high allotment of minutes again, probably 36 to 38, depending on how close the game stays. There's no one that's going to be able to guard him here as long as his shot is falling, or should I say if his shot is falling, because he struggled from the three-point line, still putting up good fantasy outings, but if he can make sure that his shot is falling, we're looking at elite-level production that I just really can't see from anyone else tonight. As our third play, we're going to go with Nikola Vucevic of the Orlando Magic against the Portland Trail Blazers, and they're not exactly the toughest team in the paint right now. Their lead defender, Al-Farouq Aminu, is not going to be playing in this game. Maurice Harkless is good. Jusuf Nurkic is a good offensive playmaker, much like Vucevic, but he just doesn't play enough defense for my liking. At his price at 13.3 on Fantasy Draft, 7,200 on FanDuel, 7,100 on DraftKings, I could definitely see him coming through with at least 5x value. I'm expecting him to put up a performance right around, I don't know why 42 keeps coming to mind, but I feel comfortable saying that I think he's going to hit about 42 fantasy points. Obviously, it'll be a little bit higher on DraftKings because I do think he's a good candidate to hit the double-double. Thank you for watching this on YouTube. As a result of watching this on YouTube, what I've decided to do is I've decided to give like 3 extra plays for people who watch us on YouTube, 3 additional plays for people who listen to the podcast. We're going to go all value. That's the idea of this extra 3 plays here. We're going to start it off with Tim Frazier. Potentially I'm way off on this, but I don't see how Tim Frazier is not going to hit 25 minutes. And at 6,400 on DraftKings or on Fantasy Draft, 3,500 minimum price on FanDuel, and 3,300 on DraftKings, I just don't see how he doesn't hit like 8x for FanDuel and DraftKings. And I could see 4 times on Fantasy Draft as well. I just think he is the elite value play on the slate tonight, despite the fact that he's been inconsistent in how he's gotten his minutes. But with Buddy Hield, Langston Galloway, and Tyreek Evans, if you listen to our podcast earlier, you'll hear that was like 78 minutes a game that's no longer with the team. That's a lot of production. Someone's going to have to step up. For me, it's Frazier. I already mentioned him when talking about the Orlando Magic. The next guy I really like is Jusuf Nurkic. He's sitting at 8,500 on Fantasy Draft, 37 on FanDuel, a little higher at 43 on DraftKings. He played 21 minutes in his debut 8 days ago for the Blazers. He's now been with the team for 10 days. I have to think that his minutes will be at least 26, maybe as high as 30 or 32. Myers Leonard and Ed Davis have been very inconsistent. Myers Leonard especially has had years in that Blazers system that he has just not been able to do anything with. I don't see now being the time that he does, and thus far in his first few games without Mason Plumlee, he hasn't come through. I would expect Nurk to be at least a point per minute. And in a matchup against a defensively inept Nikola Vukovic, I think he's got 30 to 35 point upside if he's sitting more toward that 30-minute mark. The last guy is definitely a little more risky, but he makes a good tournament option because of what he brings to the table, especially for fantasy draft and DraftKings, and that's Terrence Ross. He's coming from a situation in Toronto that wasn't ideal from him. It wasn't really conducive to his strengths because of the fact he had Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, Norman Powell, and DeMar Carroll in front of him. Now he's going to go to an Orlando team that will see Aaron Gordon shifting to the 4, seeing less time at the 3, meaning he's going to see more time at the 3. He'll also see some time at the 2. He could start. I don't know. I haven't really been able to find anything on the starting lineup. There's a potential Orlando can make another trade in the next 45 minutes. So I would definitely have him on your radar. Most of all tonight, I'm just advising everybody to just pay attention to the news wires. A lot's going on. I'm seeing Andre Roberson potentially to Chicago for Doug McDermott and some picks. So just pay attention to what's going on. In the meantime, go to our website, researchfantasy.com, for a ton more fantasy information. Like us on Twitter at Research and Win. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/researchfantasy. Sign up for our email subscriptions to get more news and exclusive picks. Thanks for listening.